Gotham is a cesspool of crime and corruption. But if there's no such thing as a middle class, and the entire city is run by a corrupt minority of criminals and villains, then why does anyone stay in Gotham? Gotham City is a mess to say the least, and the reason why Batman stepped in was because of the corruption of the city, that it ran so deeply that there was almost nothing to be done through the proper channels. Bruce Wayne has an immense amount of wealth and social power, so in theory, he could fund things like education, transportation, and better city benefits that could use to help cure the city from the inside out. But in order to do this, he would have to give the money to people who are just as crooked and shady as any villain of the week that he fights. The politicians, the courts, law enforcement, and every public service is rotten to the core in Gotham. So today, let's explain why anyone would want to live there. For this, we'll be covering a few different depictions of Gotham, since different stories show the city slightly differently. But we'll be putting the most focus on the iteration of Gotham from the Batman in the first episode of The Penguin, which is just released. Let's start here, and then talk about how this version of the city differs from other comic book iterations, and talk about the complexity of all of the versions of Gotham, not just this one. In the Batman and in the Penguin, there is an iteration of the city that truly embodies the darkest corners of what we see from the Batman. By this point in Gotham, Batman is about 2 years into his journey as a vigilante, and as a result, he is unrefined. His equipment is comparatively primitive, and Bruce hasn't yet become the full symbol that he will eventually become and grow into. Beyond this, the Riddler has completely flooded the city, and the opening news coverage of the Penguin pilot episode confirms that the poorest parts of the city were the most directly affected. The ivory penthouses of the wealthy and the rich neighborhoods of the outskirts of the city were left mostly untouched, so the ones who were already just scraping by are even worse off after the Riddler's attack. In this universe, the answer is fairly straightforward, which is that if someone can only afford the absolute cheapest, most crime-ridden area of Gotham to live in, then this is the last option, and they simply cannot afford to move. They don't have the resources to uproot themselves and create better opportunities because their conditions are so bad and so detrimental that it is difficult to even just survive. The worst depictions of Gotham can be compared to the conditions of a third world country, where every day in Gotham is a fight for survival. They can't afford to rent a moving truck and start looking for better places to live, which is one of the most. All of this is boiled down to abject poverty. Rising through the ranks economically is an exponential curve, meaning that it's inherently more difficult to improve one's conditions from the very bottom, and it gets much easier once someone has more of an economic freedom at their disposal. In Gotham, the rich stay very rich because they have the ability to take excess money that they do not need and invest it in other streams of revenue. They don't have to worry about every dime they make having to go towards food, rent, utilities, a car, or transportation, as well as medication, clothing, and other basic necessities that people need to live. So let's say that someone decides to just drop everything, take whatever they have, and start walking until they get somewhere new outside of Gotham. If this is the case, then the public transportation can only take you so far, and eventually, this lone Gothamite in question will have to start paying for cab fare, bus tickets, or other methods of transportation. The poorest people in Gotham do not have cars of their own, and the rail system can only do so much. So now, someone is left walking through the poorest parts of Gotham, which is a terrible idea for a lot of reasons. This is how people in Gotham are mugged, murdered, abducted, or have something even worse happen to them. The bleak reality is to even move safely in Gotham, people need resources, and just living there eats away at what little they already have. Although it may not be impossible to get out of Gotham for some and to start a new life, it is almost impossible for others, and the likelihood of succeeding and being able to leave Gotham is very low. In the universe, we see that anyone who doesn't want to leave will just have to navigate the ruins of the flood, which make Gotham look post-apocalyptic in the first episode of The Penguin. The infrastructure there is not meant to support mass migration, and this would again mean that all of these people have to go somewhere new. Some of them may be able to rely on friends or family in another city to help them out for a short amount of time, to help them get a new job or a new life. But we cannot apply this hypothetical possibility to everyone, because in reality, very few Gothamites have this possibility. Most people who end up in this corner of Gotham get there specifically because they do not have any better option. For them, the best they can hope for is a day-to-day survival, and many of them are actively trying to build a better life for themselves. When the cost of just existing siphons everything that you make and leaves you with nothing, then it is an uphill climb that is nearly impossible. But this is the Batman and the Penguin. In some iterations of the comics, however, Gotham is a much more complex system than it is in this Batman franchise. Cinematically speaking, this is one of the most distinctive iterations of Gotham, with no identity that is much different from other films or TV shows. But in the comics, Gotham is a much more complex entity. It's a living creature with its own diversity, and just like any city, it has good and bad parts to it. In the less dangerous parts of Gotham, Gotham has a bustling nightlife, and a Grant Morrison comics in particular take a deliberate effort to show the allure of living in Gotham, something that was not done in comics before. Morrison has asked this very same question, and so in the comics as well as graphic novels, he actually tried to make Gotham appealing, to lure them into the city. And in his own words, he described Gotham as being the loudest, jazziest city in the country, with the best art, the best food, music, restaurants, and theaters. People come here because they hope to make it in Gotham. Because if they can make it in Gotham, then they get to reap the benefits of living in one of the most vibrant cities on the planet. But this would be the trap, and this is where things get difficult. As people begin to fail and begin to struggle, they slip through the social ladder. They have to make sacrifices to survive. Sometimes these sacrifices include moving to cheaper parts of Gotham, which come with other drawbacks of higher crime rates and far more violence. This is how criminals are created, since most criminals do not start off maliciously. It's rare for someone to have the desire to commit crime and to throw their life away entirely in order to make a career as a criminal. In most cases, people of Gotham resort to crime because of their circumstances. This is not just true for Gotham, but it's a phenomenon that has been studied here in the real world as well extensively. In its base form, crime is just the forced reallocation of economic resources. If someone is poor, and they cannot feed themselves, they are likely to take extreme measures to make sure that they have money and are cared for. It is a last resort. If this is why someone who is poor and cannot afford to buy food, they are more likely to steal it. And Gotham is a petri dish where this type of behavior is studied. It is densely populated with desperation. Batman knows this as well. When he polices the city, he specifically targets the areas with the highest crime rates when on his nightly patrol. We also know that Batman takes time out of his night to specifically solve particular cases, which he can only do by sacrificing his nightly routine. This is one of the traits of Batman that the Batman films does extraordinarily well. The idea that he's the symbol of Batman, and that this is used as a tool of fear against criminals. Batman in this universe does not have control over crime by beating up every criminal who dares to commit one. He does it by instilling fear that he may be watching. He makes criminals think twice before doing anything nefarious, because even though it's statistically unlikely that they'll run into him, they still have to ask themselves, what if? Regardless of the iteration of Gotham, however, the most prevalent trait of the city is that the slums keep people trapped there, and that the criminals keep people trapped there. They keep them weak to pad their own pockets, keep them desperate, addicted to drugs, in debt. The criminals want to keep Gotham dangerous. They want to keep its people dangerous. And the best way to do that is to choke them of all of their resources, and eventually deny them of even sanity. Going back to the Morrison works, Gotham is complex, but the fact remains that Gotham is designed for the rich to continue to get richer, for the poor to struggle daily just to stay in the slums. They pay everything to survive, and have nothing when the time comes where they need to escape. If the people in the poorest areas of Gotham, if they could unite, build savings, they could afford something decent, a car perhaps, a better life. And that is what Batman aims to fix, instilling the good people of Gotham with power. And without Batman, the city would eventually likely crumble completely. But anyway, friends, what do you think of the reason why people still decide to stay and live in Gotham? And do you want to see this covered in the Penguin and future DC content? If you enjoyed this video on DC, be sure to smash the subscribe button and the like button, as well as request more down below, and I hope you're having a great day.